Okay, today we're starting today's new Torah chapter. New Torah chapter. We're four chapters from the end of the book of Exodus. There's three more chapters in front of us. And this chapter talks about the garments of the high priest and the regular priests. The Kohen Gadol, the big priest, and the Kohen Hedyot, and the regular priest. The Kohen Gadol was pretty impressive. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Maybe we'll even look at a little picture here. Watch this. Here we go. There's a picture of the... Okay. The Kohen Gadol had something like this. These were the garments that he had. And he had, the most impressive of all of them was this plate here that he had. It was called the breastplate, the Choshen. And it had 12 stones on it. And on each one was written the names of the tribes, 12 tribes. And there were a few other things written there also in order to get all the letters of the Hebrew alphabet. So he was written in order that they were born: Reuven and Shimon and Levi and Yehuda, Yisachar, Zvulun. Those are the sons of Leah. And then we have Dan and Naphtali. Those were the two sons of the of the maidservant of Rachel. And then we have Gad and Asher. Those were the two sons of the maidservants of Leah. And finally, the two sons of of Rachel herself, Yosef and Benjamin. And here there were written a few more words also. There's written Shivtei Yisrael was written over here. And over here was written also Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov was written here. And there, each one was a different stone. Right, pretty impressive. And inside they put this piece of parchment with the name of God in it that would make these stones light up according to spiritual. You could ask questions and they would answer. Okay, but here, this is what's called, we're going to go over all these. We're going to have a look at this. There was what's called a tzitz. That's probably the second most interesting. This was a piece of gold, a plate of gold that was written on it, holy to God, Kodesh to Hashem. And then there was the hat that was called the mitznefet. And there was a little space over here where the Kohen could actually wear tefillin. You could actually put tefillin on, because it's a commandment to have tefillin on all the time. Tefillin. And then maybe the next most unusual one was the belt. It says there was a belt that it was, how long was it? 18 amos long? I forgot. 1 second, let me have a look. It was, anyway, it was very long, and it was woven. All this was woven. We're going to go into it and exactly what it was made of. But exactly what it was made of. And he wrapped that around himself several times. Here it is. 16 amos long, which 16 amos long means like 24 feet, something like that, 24 feet, a little bit more. I said that an am is about 1.5, 1.5. Somebody said it's not 1.5 feet, it is 1.6 feet. Okay, so good, it's a little bit more. Right, so these are he had, there were pants that he wore underneath this, and then there was a katonet, sort of a gown that he wore underneath this. There was this white thing that also was down here. Here. And then there was the ephod. Ephod was, we'll see pictures of it later also, but ephod, this was like a sort of a half dress that he wore over this. That was on the outside. And then between the katonet and the ephod, this red thing, there was the me'il, which is sort of red. It was techilet. Me'il. So that's what he would wear. The Kohen Gadol would wear this when he was serving outside of the Holy of Holies. When he went into the Holy of Holies, which he only went in on Yom Kippur, then he would wear white garments, pure white. He wouldn't wear all this fancy stuff. Okay, so we'll talk about this later, just so that you have a little bit of an idea what we're talking about when we talk about it. But interestingly enough, this Torah portion does not begin with the clothes. The first thing it begins with, we'll see, it begins pretty early, and that's the main topic over here. But it begins with bringing oil. Moses commanding the Jewish people to bring him oil to light the menorah. Remember, we talked about the menorah last week. The menorah in the Holy Temple. Now, if you remember correctly, but I'm sure you do remember, the Holy Temple had basically 3 areas to it. 3 areas. You can actually say 4 areas. Okay, the innermost and the holiest was called the Holy of Holies, Kodesh Kadoshim. And in there was the tablets that Moses received on Mount Sinai. And they were inside of an ark that was called the Aron. And the ark had a covering on top, which was called the Kaporet. And on the Kaporet were these 2 statues, angels. Remember, we talked about that at great length last week. And then that was the inner room. Then there was a curtain. And outside of that curtain was called the tent of meeting. Tent of meeting, Ohel Moed. And in that tent was called the holy. Also, not everybody could go in there, only the Kohanim, but the people from outside could sort of see in there. They could see in there. And there was on the left side was the menorah, was this menorah with the 7 branches on it. And that was on the left side as you were walking in. On the right side, far right side, was this weird table that had 6-layer table on it. And in each layer, there was 2 loaves of bread, one on one side, one on the other side, 12 loaves of bread. And in the middle was the golden altar where they would offer up the incense every day. And that area was called the Holy. And Moses would go in there and God would speak to him from the Holy of Holies. The voice would come out. But he would be standing in this place called the Holy. And then outside of that was the big altar that was made of copper. And the big altar that was basically only accessible to the Kohanim also. They could only also go there. But that was open, totally open. Everybody could see that. And then there was a 4th area, and that's where everybody could go. And there were some offerings, what's called the Kodshim Kalim, that could be even offered, it could be slaughtered over there. Like, for instance, the Paschal offering, everybody could slaughter it over there in that area. But most of the other sacrifices were done on what's called the north side. In other words, the right side of where the altar was. There were rings where they were tied. But that's not important to us now. That's not important to us now. That we'll talk about later. Now what's important to us is where is the menorah. I just want to say this, where the menorah was. Where the menorah was. And the garments of the Kohen, which we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes. Okay. God says to Moses, you, Moses, command, we talked about this in the morning in the Chassidut class. You, Moses, command the Jewish people, and they should bring to you pure, zach means pure, olive oil. In Hebrew, that's what it goes. Instead of saying pure olive oil, it says oil, olive, pure. Katit lamor, that is crushed especially for the menorah. For the there was also oil that was used for anointing. There was also the oil and offerings. This is for the la'alot ner tamid. That a light should go up constantly. Okay, let's just do the first 4 sentences and then we're going to go back. The Ohel Moed, and the Ohel Moed, which is that's the holy, that's the area which is right outside of the right outside of the curtain that separates between the holy and the holy of holies. This is the holy, michutz leproches, outside of this curtain that separates the edut, where the tablets are. Edut are the tablets that testify. Edut, that's called edut. The tablets. Yaroch Aaron ubanav me'erav ad boker. Aaron and his sons should arrange the candles, these candles, from the evening until the morning. Why does it say constantly? Why evening? So Rashi explains evening and morning means they sacrificed it every day. Because it was done every day, so it was called constant in front of God. Chukat olam, this is an eternal law for all generations from the Jewish people, right? For the Jewish people. Right? We're going to go and learn Rashi in just one moment. Let's do a couple more sentences. Next, va'ato, and now, who are the Kohanim? Who are the priests over there? There was only 5 of them. There was only 5 priests. There was Aaron and his 4 sons. And 2 of the sons, we're going to see, they get killed. They get killed. They, as soon as the tabernacle was open, his 2 sons rushed in there. They wanted to be the first ones to go into the Holy of Holies. They rushed in and they died. So it ended up that Aaron only had 2 sons. Aaron and his sons, they were the only ones. And of course, any one of his sons that were born after that was also. Now, Aaron didn't have any more sons, but the other ones, Elazar and Itamar, they did have sons. And the 2 sons that were burned up, Nadav and Avihu, they were burned up. So they didn't have any sons before they died. They weren't married. That was one of the reasons they were burned up, because they weren't married. But we'll talk about that later also. We'll get to that. Parsha Shmini. Vata now, Hakrev Alecha Aaron, take Aaron, your brother, and his sons with him from the Jewish people. Separate them from the Jewish people, Lachahanoli, and they will be my priests. Originally, was supposed to be the firstborn was supposed to be the priests, but after the sin of the golden calf, so God rejected the firstborn. Aaron, Nadav, Avihu, these were the 2 sons that got killed. Elazar and Itamar, Bnei Aaron, all these are the 4 sons of Aaron. Ve'asita bigdei kodesh, and you should make holy garments. La'aron achicha, for Aaron your brother, lekavod ulutiforet, for honor and for beauty. In other words, he had this wonderful job of being the high priest, but he also had to be beautiful and honored. And this, they say, was to fix up the garments that Adam brought. If you remember, Adam, when the first man was created by God, so he was supposed to live forever. And also, commensurate with that, he was not embarrassed. He was totally naked, and there was no shame. He had no shame for his body, because his body was just, like you put your to put tefillin on your arm and on your head. So also the organ of procreation was just another limb that you did a commandment with. And after Adam ate from the tree, so he became selfish, and all of a sudden things became egotistical in the world, and especially the sexual act, instead of being connected with bringing children into the world, it became connected with just having pleasure. So he got embarrassed. He got embarrassed from his own egotism, and he made garments. Adam made garments. And it says there was 2 types of garments. He took a fig leaf, and there was the garments of skins that he put on cutnot ore. And these garments of the Kohen come to fix that up. They come to fix that up. That's coming to use the garments for a holy purpose, only purely holy purpose, right? But that's what it means, the kavod like for it, that he used all the beauty and the honor from garments, used that to serve the creator of the universe. And you speak to the Chachmei Lev, speak to the experts, that they are filled with the spirit of wisdom, and they should make garments for Aaron to make him holy for me. And what are the garments? These are the ones I just showed you. These are the garments you should make. A choshen, that was the plate that I showed you, right? That's on the chest of Aaron with the stones in it, and an ephod. That's like the apron that went around, but it was reversed. The open side was in front, and the me'il, that's what goes underneath the ephod, and the ketonet that goes underneath that. Yet, ketonet, that's like the robe that goes underneath the me'il. The ketonet tashbetz, and mitznefes, that's the hat, and the avneit, that was this 24-foot long belt that he wrapped around himself. Also pick the kodesh and make holy garments for Aaron, your brother, and his sons to be holy to me. And they will take the gold and the tchelet and this wool dyed tchelet, argaman, another type of wool dyed another color, like some sort of purple or something. Betatolat sheni, and another type of wool, which was also this tol sheni, ve'eta sheish. In this case, sheish means linen. Sometimes sheish is also another type of wool, but here it means sheish means linen. Okay, so now we're going to make the garments of the Kohen, but first of all, let's go right back to the beginning and look at some of the commentary here. Okay, we're starting from the beginning. God says to Moses, Moses, you command the Jewish people, and they should take to you oil, olive, pure, pounded for the light, to make light. To raise up the lamp should burn constantly. Rashi. and you, Moses, you should command the Jews to take to you. Moses, the Rashi does not deal with any of the other words. He starts off with this. What does it mean? Pure. What does it mean? Pure olive oil. It says pure olive oil means bli shmarim, without any dregs, no impurities. Like it's written in the Talmud and Masech and Menachot. And those are the bread offerings. That's what they use the oil for. Migargo Rosh, it says how you do it. They take it from the top of the olive tree. These are, so it says, what does it mean, katit? These, they should be crushed. The olives should be crushed in a special crusher, but you don't grind them up in a grinder. Why? Because if you grind them up with a grinder, then there's going to be some sort of residue or little pieces there. So how do you make oil with no pieces ever in it? The first little drop that comes out, you put that into, first of all, you take the first drop, right, out, and that's used for this. And then afterwards, you put the olive into the grinder and you grind them up. And then all the other rest of the oil starts coming out. But that second oil comes out, that's already not good for this lighting of the menorah. Menorah has to be only for the first drop that comes out of every single olive. So every single olive is like pressed individually. But the second oil that comes out, that's good for the bread offerings. Because you have to use in the bread offerings, you have to use oil. Like it says katit lemor, because this one it says, this is katit lemor. The first drop is pressed for the light and not for the menorah, not for the the menorah. I'm sorry, it's for the meor and not katit for the bread offerings, the manachot. Lalot ner tamid, there should go up a constant flame. Madlik, what does it mean that you have to light the flame ad shetei mishalevet ole me'aleha, that the flame has to go up. You have to make sure that the flame goes up on its own. You can't light it, and if it goes out, so you go back and light it again. No, you have to keep the the fire, the match or whatever you light it with, until it goes up on its own. Right? Until when you're sure that when you take the match away or the stick away that you light it with, that it's going to continue burning. Tamid, it has to burn constantly. What does it mean constantly? It doesn't burn constantly. It just burns in the nighttime. Says every night is called constant. And just like you find when the Olat Tamid, they had every day in the Holy Temple, they would offer up the first offering, and the last offering was a sheep, and that was called a Tamid. And this is all, but it was an offering that was offered up constantly, but it wasn't offered constantly. They didn't have a long line of people of Kohanim just waiting there. As soon as one sheep was offered, the next one would be offered. You'd offer up 1,000 every day or something. No, there was only two, one in the morning and one in the evening. Why was it called constant? Because it was done every single day. Became menachos chabitin, and also there was there were certain bread offerings for the Kohanim, and that was also cut tamid. But it was only really just half of it in the morning, half of it in the evening. But because it was done every single day of the week, therefore it is called a constant offering. Here's an interesting thing from the Baal HaTurim. It says, now we're going from the beginning. Let's go. Ata tetzaveh. God said, you, Moses, command. The Lubavitcher Rebbe says that even though that Moses' name is not mentioned here explicitly in written Moses, but this is more even intimate than usual, because now God speaks to Moses and says, you is more familiar than just calling Moses by his name. So this is like to the essence of Moses. Okay, the Baal HaTurim says something a little bit different. Says, Moses' name is not mentioned in this week's Torah portion, which is not the case the whole rest of the Chumash. From the time that Moses was born, in other words, right in the beginning of the book of Exodus, there is no Torah portion where Moses' name is not mentioned, except in the book of Deuteronomy. In Deuteronomy, his name is not mentioned, but there it's not mentioned very simply because Moses is doing all the talking. So therefore, there was no reason to mention his name. It was obvious right in the beginning. It says these are the words that Moses spoke to the Jewish people before they went into Israel. So the whole entire book of Deuteronomy is Moses speaking. But nevertheless, in the book of Exodus and of Leviticus and in the book of Numbers, every single Torah portion has Moses' name written in it. Why? Except for this one. Why? This we learned in the Hasidut class in the morning. Because Moses said, next week, wipe me out from the book that you wrote. Moses said to God, right? God got very mad. We talked about this in the morning. God got very mad at the Jewish people after they worshiped the golden calf. And he said, Moses, I'm finished with them. I've done them all sorts of favors, took them out of Egypt, gave them to eat bread from heaven, water from a rock. I protect them, gave them the Torah. And look what they did. They worshiped the golden calf, exactly what I told them not to do. So you know what, Moses, listen, I'm going to wipe them all out. God said to Moses, I'm going to wipe out all the Jews, and I'll make you into a new person. And there'll still be a Jewish people. I'm never going to leave the Jewish people, but there'll be different people. Why should I wait until these guys pass away? I mean, everybody dies anyway. Why should I wait for them to die? Let's start soon, right? Let's start soon. Well, you're going to be the new Jewish people. Your children, your family, they'll all be the Jews. And then, I'll have a better chance with them than I do with these others. Moses said, no way, God. I don't want you to no way, don't kill the Jews. The ones that really actively worship the golden calf, okay. But all the rest of them, they were punished because they just didn't step in. They didn't resist, right? They didn't tell them, the others, they didn't reprove them or try to chastise them or warn them. So you're going to kill everybody because of that. So Moses said, listen, there'll be a lot of trouble, but it's going to be worth it to you in the end, God. And listen, if you insist on wiping them out, then don't think that you're going to wipe them out and you're going to make a new nation from me. I want you to wipe me out too. Wipe me out. Take my name out of the whole Torah. Take my name out of the whole Bible. I don't want my name there anymore. So God said, okay, Moses, okay, you convinced me. I'm not going to wipe out the Jewish people. Okay, good. That's it. So he says, well, it's not exactly it, because Moses said, take me out of your book. So, and because Moses said it, and he was such a great person, so God did it. Where? In this week's Torah portion. But in this, instead, God took him out, but he left in this Torah portion a commandment for the menorah to Moses, and also the Tamid says Tzavet Bnei Israel, and in the constant offering. We just talked about that in Moses in Rashi. Also, it says Tzavet Bnei Israel. You command the Jewish people, because both of them noagim b'kol yom. The true God wiped out Moses' name from this Torah portion, but he gave him a commandment which is eternal. For every day and every day, they lit the candles. And also the same thing, there's another place where God told Moses, bring the constant offering, Tzav, you command the Jewish people. That's also every day. And also, these two things have, you lose money. Why? Because there's no benefit. You take these two offerings, these sheep every day, one in the morning, one in the evening, and they're burnt up totally on the altar. The priests don't get any part of it. And also here, they light up the candles in the holy, right, in the tent of meeting. And it was unnecessary, because it said that the holy temple shined outward. They didn't need the candles for light. So in other words, both of these two things were just like a waste of money. True, it was doing a commandment, but there's nothing left of it afterwards. So therefore, God had to speed up and encourage Moses and the Jewish people to do it. That's why it said tzav. Titzava. Okay, now enough. Okay, now we have a couple of gematrias. The Balaturim, that's Yaakov Balaturim. He was the son of the Rosh of the Rabbeinu Asher. He wrote the book called the Tur. And the Tur, that was the forerunner of the Shulchan Aruch. The Tur. Or it says Titzava. This word Titzava, what does it say? You light the candles in the holy temple. Well, this word Titzava is the same numerical value as the word Nashim, women. And as the women are the ones that are going to light Shabbos candles in the future, they're going to continue this lighting candles. Ata Titzaveh, what does it mean, Titzaveh? This hints at the women, Aner Nashim Chova, that the women are the ones that also have an obligation. They carried out this obligation of lighting the menorah. When is it? On every Shabbat. So it says Nashim Tzaveh, Titzaveh, and the women, they have the commandment of lighting the candles on Shabbos. Yikhu Elecha, it says you should take the light to you. But God says, but me, I don't need the light. The holy temple is already shining. Katit has to be crushed up. Right now he's playing with these letters. But you have to remember, this is God writing this. So every letter has a special holiness and meaning. Katit, here we have Chaf, Taf, and Yud, Taf. This is the amount of time that the holy temples stood. The first holy temple stood 410 years. Taf is 400. Yud is 10, 410. Second temple stood 420 years. That's Chaf. Taf is 400. Chaf is 20. This hints at the 410 and the 420 years in the first temple, the second temple, that the menorah was lit. It was after that it wasn't lit anymore. Laha'alot ner tamid. What does it say here? Laha'alot ner tamid. But there should be a little vav over here, right? Laha'alot, there should be a vav. Why is there no vav? So he says it's hinting at something. Lahalot, it's missing the letter Vav to say that 6 lights would, you would light 7. 6 of them would go out when the day came. They would go out on their own. But the Ner Ma'aravi, the 7th candle, one of those lights would be lit for all ever. This is the light which was the closest one, pointing toward. There's a different opinion between Rashi and Rambam. Lema'or says Lema'or lahalot. This is the gematria chetzi lug shemen laner. You had to bring 1/2 of a lug, an amount. Ner tamid. This is the gematria Shabbat. Would be lit on Shabbat. Interesting. Okay, let's do the Or HaChaim here. Or HaChaim says, he asked the question, why does it say tetzaveh? Why does it say you, Moses, command? Why doesn't it say you speak to the Jewish people like all the other time in the Torah? It says the barrel ben Israel. Here it says tetzaveh. Also, why does it say tetzaveh? Why does it say tzav? Okay, he asked more questions, but let's go to the Or HaChaim. This is the Rabbi Chaim ben Attar. He's buried in Jerusalem. It says like this. It's a hint that now has come the time to give the priesthood to Aaron. So it says, God gave Aaron the priesthood, Borer Hashem LaMoshe, and God chose for Moses to be the king. Israel. Now Moses was officially the king over the Jewish people, and Aaron was the priest, high priest. That's what it says, Tetzaveh et Bnei Yisrael. You command the Jewish people. And God was giving a statement. He was making a statement. From now on, Moses, you are going to command the Jewish people. Like it says, V'tzavehu Hashem l'nagid, that God commanded him to be the leader. Even though that when they were in Egypt, it already said, that Moses, God commanded Moses on the Jewish people. And it said over there that Moses became the leader. But here, God chose Moses not just to be the leader, but he was the king. And Aaron was going to be of the priest. But maybe we can say that's what it intended when it said before, V'atem tiyuli mamlechas kohanim v'goy kadosh. Remember, right before God gave the Torah, so there's the sentence, and it says, you will be for me a nation of priests and a kingship of priests and a holy nation. Mamlechet, that you will be a kingship, that refers to Moses. He will be a king. Mamlechet, kohanim, priests, that refers to Aaron. Goy kadosh, a holy nation, that refers to the Levites. The Levites were people that were relatives of Levi, or the tribe of Levi. But maybe Yirmos Ba'omru, when it says Tetzaveh, Moses was also a Levi, right? When it said Tetzaveh al derech Omer, when it says in the Zohar, Ki kol Talmid Chacham, any Torah scholar, and every Torah scholar has a little spark from the soul of Moses. That's what the rabbis say, that they would call one another, they would call Moses. Whenever one of the rabbis would say something very deep or true, they would say, Moses, you spoke very nice. Moshe. Yehuzeh medaber bebechinas nefesh, because Moses is the one that's speaking through the person who is saying the words of Torah. And that's what it says, Ata tetzaveh. Like it says in Tehillim, Ki malach tiv yitzaveh lecha, in Psalms. Shehu lashon tzavta. Tzavta means connection or accompanying. That Moses, it says, tetzaveh means that Moses attaches himself and accompanies every person that learns Torah. Tetzaveh means connect to the Jewish people. And you already know that the only importance in the Jewish people is someone who learns Torah. So God shows him that this shows that with the oil to show that the Torah, this is like oil, it lights up the whole world. So that's the idea of Moses. The whole thing of Moses was receiving the Torah. We have a lot more to learn over here, but we don't have time to do it. Okay, I don't know exactly what the Lubavitcher Rebbe, this was the last mimer, the last Hasidic discourse that he distributed, he had this distributed to his followers right before he had a stroke. And there he says, Moses, you, Tetzaveh, connect the Jewish people to God. Well, how? By means of taking this pure oil, katit. You have to teach the Jewish people how to crush themselves. And when they do, they reach the source of all light. And then there can be a constant light, constant fire burning inside of every Jew all the time. Okay, let's just do one more. It says in the Oel Moed, where should you light this in the menorah? Where's the menorah? The menorah was in the outer sanctum, in the holy, outside of the dividing curtain that divides between the holy and the holy of holies, where the ark is. Aaron should have it light it up from the evening until the morning in front of God. This is a law. Let's do the Dat Zakanim. Rashi says that what does it mean here? Let's see Rashi. Rashi says that it should light from the evening to the morning. Well, in the winter, the nights are longer. So Rashi says that's very simple. You give a bigger measure according to the winter nights than in the summer nights. And the rabbi said that a half of a log for Tevet, which is in the winter, and etc. And also for all the other nights. And if there was left over, so there's nothing wrong with that. Says I'm sorry. Rashi says you put the biggest measure that there is. Rashi said put the biggest measure possible. The measure for the long nights of Tevet. That's it. So you don't have to measure every single night. Like I said, you just put the biggest measure possible, the measure that would be for the winter nights. And if there was any left over, there's nothing wrong with that. It says that that's a canon, doesn't make any sense to me. Good, I can understand that you always have a one measure of oil that you put in all the time, but it doesn't make any sense to me that it's okay if there remains some. It says Rashi says that it'll be lit from the evening until the morning, and they said they put one half of a lug, namely the amount for the longest night of the year. And if there was any left over, so there's nothing wrong with that. Says the Das Zakanim, it doesn't seem right to me. And it doesn't seem right also to Rav Yitzchak Bar Avram Zal. I think maybe this could be the Barbanel. He says, it doesn't seem to me right that in the summer days, they would always be throwing away oil that's left over. But on the other hand, they had to put the same amount all the time. So how could they avoid having oil left over in the short summer nights? This is very simple. That when the nights were very short, so they would make the wick thick, so the flame would be bigger, and it would eat up more oil, and there wouldn't be any left over. In the course of time, they would learn how thick to make it. And every night they would make it a little bit thinner and thinner as the nights got longer and longer, so that the flame would be smaller and it would eat up the oil slower. This also implies also in Menachos, in the Gemara in Menachos, that says that there was a person called Ben Bibi, and he was appointed on the Pekia, on the wicks. So what did he have to be appointed on the wicks for? Just make wicks for the whole rest of the year? He says no. And obviously they had to measure the wicks each time so that it would be sure that in the summer nights, in the summer nights when the night was short, so they would put a thick wick, so there would be a big flame and it would eat up the oil fast. In the winter nights, it would be smaller. So says the Datzakanim. Tomorrow morning, God willing, 8:15, we'll meet again and continue with Chassidut. Have a good day with Mashiach now.